Hi, I'm Anna. A pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Miss Charlotta, in your career, you've organized over 100 museum exhibitions, and ever since 1970, you've had this amazing chance to work with both local and international artists. I actually read somewhere you wanted to first study chemistry, and then from chemistry, you're curating art that's traveled all over the world. Wow. You were the US commissioner to the exhibition called Venice Biennale, am I saying that right? And with the works by Louis Bourgeois, which is amazing. You've curated this exhibition in IO recently. Congratulations. Artists as activists, such a provocative term. Tell us a little bit more about the exhibition and the thinking behind it.
So the exhibition sort of started with the politicizing space. I wanted to bring this little booklet, which we had and it was here in New York at the Anya and Andrew Shiva Gallery at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And I'm very interested in artists sort of commenting on the events of the moment and political situations and like really responding to the events of that time. And when this exhibition was on, and it was about space, about urbanism, the city, and how certain parts of the cities are really forbidden, certain people come in, how is a city built up over time, it's not a new thing only, to keep certain people in and certain people out, privilege and all that which goes with it. And at the time, a lot of few administrators from the Czech and Slovak Museum and Library in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, came to New York, and they saw the exhibition. That's why I'm mentioning it. And they saw the exhibition, and they said, "Would you be interested to possibly curate an exhibition for us? We would really like to maybe change our diet a little bit. Maybe we would like to bring in, sort of more contemporary things and more opened up, the dialogue with the community and with, with the current affairs." And I said, certainly, I would very much like to do that. But I am afraid that you might have to put up with some political statements which not everyone in the community might like. And would you be, because I really wanted to be sure that I'm not offending anybody, but also I'm not compromising. And so they said fine. And over time, actually the director of the museum changed there. And she still supported the project. I was very excited about that. And so finally this year, we indeed installed the exhibition. It was supposed to open on March 28th, which was in the middle of the COVID crisis. So obviously it was it had little problems there. But we were able to get most of the objects before, not all of them. I wanted to include few other artists like Doris Salcido, another South American artist who did a lot of statements about disappeared, the whole sort of group of people who had this horrible, horrible death during the dictatorial regime. So it was not all ideal, but I think that the museum itself and the curator there, the Stephanie Kohn and everybody else there, they really did a very nice installation of very sort of different objects, and I couldn't be there, which I'm so, it was really at the time. And
how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I was very saddened, but I was very happy that they did such a great job.
They did, and did they just walk up to you in New York and say, "Hey, we would love to work with you"?
I mean, how did we meet? I think there was an event at the Czech Center. Speaking of the Czech Center,
of course.
Yes, so Czech Center, and we started to talk, and they knew that I am like a curator, and that now I do independent projects. I worked at the museums and organizations for many years, and after I retired and concentrated more on teaching and independent curating, I can really take projects which I'm very interested in. And that's where the politics come in, because I am like, I am really news junkie, and I really love to sort of know what's happening and very, politics is very of great interest to me.
Very interesting. What so tell me, how did you start the process of thinking about the exhibition? Like, how do you just start finding different artists that you want to work with, or do you first start off with ideas? I mean, what were the challenges? And you were also doing it remotely. Was that a challenge as well?
Yeah, it was a challenge. It was a challenge, and also finances are always a challenge. You start with the idea, but you also have to be willing to admit that not everything you really want to do and have to want to get for the exhibition that you might not be able to get. We got a loan from Guggenheim Museum, we got a loan from the Whitney Museum, but we didn't get the loan for Brooklyn Museum, which is kind of bizarre because I worked there
that
for
is true. You worked there for 35 years. You worked
They
there.
basically said no, but it was a piece by Ai Weiwei, but I was able to find another piece by Ai Weiwei from a private collector whom I know. So, you really have to kind of balance and be realistic about what you can do and what you cannot do. The same with David Czerny. I wanted to have, obviously, in the museum also being a Czech artist and being sort of international Czech artist. So we wanted to have, like some major pieces. And David suggested that we should buy from the army supplies inflatable tank. And he's going
from the army.
Yeah, from the
oh
army.
my God.
From the army, inflatable tank. You can buy anything from the army.
I had no idea.
And it's like it's like you set it somewhere. It's like Trojan horse.
Wow.
Basically, you can buy the tank, but it's not a tank, and you position in such a way that the enemy army thinks there is a tank.
That's a Trojan horse.
So, exactly, total Trojan horse. So, but the museum, and that he would paint it pink, and he would like a replica of the pink tank from Prague. But then ultimately it sounded a little too large for the museum, and we have a very small pink tank there. But you kind of have to balance what you can do and you cannot do. Your dreams and the reality.
Of course, and it's I think managing those relationships and seeing like if one thing can't happen, you have to go to another. And how did you have to? Were you just picking up the phones and asking people how to help, or? Yeah,
I had to pick up a lot of phones or emails because it's really easier when you give people space to really think about things. The phone sometimes can be a little too pushy, and first find out who has a piece you would like to borrow, and then who might be willing to lend. And, obviously I made a mistake with the Brooklyn Museum, because I thought that would be easy, but then ultimately it was not. So, but I thought Guggenheim might be more difficult, but that was actually easier. So you kind of never know, you just try.
You never know, you just have to try.
You just have to try.
And I'd actually love to know, if you just have to try, was it also the same thing when you tried to go from Buffalo to New York City? I believe the year was 1983.
1983. Yes, it was also like you have to try, because the Buffalo was great in the 1970s. That was a place.
You came from Prague with one of your sons.
1970, and
that year.
Yeah, and we came as a family then.
As a family.
So it was really kind of in some way easier. And also, Buffalo has a very Midwestern mentality.
Right.
And people in Midwest actually are very, very nice. It's very calm. I think if we would come to New York, I would have gone crazy because I barely spoke English. The children were brought up here totally different than in Prague. It was very different situation.
Totally different.
So coming to Buffalo was gave me a little space to adjust. And with my broken English, we went to some lunch at the Albright Knox Art Gallery. And at the end of the lunch, they asked me if I would like to work as an intern at the Albright Knox Art Gallery. And
wow.
Because I'm basically a positive person, I said yes. But they got the money from New York State Council on the Arts for an intern. And I indeed got the job. And that's where I learned English. And I'm working in the museums ever since, It's just like... I think positive attitude,
Of course.
That's very important.
Positive attitude can get us into so many great situations.
Yes.
And they saw you and they saw something in you and they said, I
guess so. But now when I was leaving Buffalo, and there was a great community. The media studies started in Buffalo. There was so much independent filmmaking and everything. It was just incredible place in the 70s. But then people started to move to New York, and it was time for us to move as well. And again, sort of by chance, I wrote to all different museums because Peter was always sort of, independent. My then husband and the kids, we had 2 small kids, and I simply could not afford not to have health insurance, So I wrote to every museum in the world. I mean, not in New York, not in the world, in New York. And the Brooklyn Museum answered that they don't have anything, but I should really think about it, and they would keep me posted. And they had a part-time job in print department, and I love works on paper, so I started to work there, and then I worked there
and was that your first time in New York City?
Yeah, it was first time in New York City, absolutely. And the first day I took kids to school in South Park Slopes. We moved to Brooklyn, and the big garbage truck hit my little car. Yeah. And I saw
the big garbage car just went into this little car.
Was like, I was kind of too slow. I was from Midwest, basically, okay? And I didn't move fast enough in Brooklyn. And so he didn't damage it, but scraped it. And I was just like, oh my God, I want to get out from here.
The first day, it's a classic New York conflict, day one.
First day, kids in school, I was like,
oh. It must have been so nerve-wracking. I mean, it's New York City has definitely changed from 1970 to now. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen from
cleanliness? It really is much more clean.
Really?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it really is, and the homelessness and sort of in the 80s. I came here 83. It was pretty difficult. You stopped at the intersection and you were kind of accosted from all sides by people begging for whatever. And it's changed a lot. Unfortunately, it changed also that a lot of people had to move out, and the artists especially. There were all these areas in Brooklyn and in Manhattan which were really artist areas. They came there, they were able to get cheap real estate and live in apartments or lofts or places they cannot afford anymore. And then sort of, richer people followed, and it just changed a lot. But it's really easier to live in New York now if you can afford it. The problem is the financial situation that a lot of people simply cannot afford it, and that's a pretty horrible thing. And I think now after the crisis with COVID, it's going to be a big problem.
I mean, I was going to ask you. I mean, no one is going to museums these days because of COVID, and I mean, it's quite a scary time. And how have museums adjusted to this?
It's going to be difficult because I don't know if you had a chance to read in a paper last few days. There was, rich museums, and Metropolitan Museum is a rich museum. The endowment and the donors and people who support the museum, it's a rich group. And they are furloughing people and letting people go. There are a lot of people who lost their jobs from the museum, like Metropolitan Museum.
Wow.
And that's, as I say, it's a rich institution. So of course, it then percolates to smaller institutions. It's going to affect a lot of people.
Wow.
It's going to affect the job market and the abilities of the institutions to do really important projects, because you will have, the loans, international transportation, international insurance, all that's going to be affected. So the museums are going to be hit.
Yeah, it's
as everybody else.
As everybody else. Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely going to be different.
Yeah.
And I mean, what trends, or I was going to ask you, where is now, because of the situation, where is the New York City art scene going? And, what trends will change in the future, perhaps because of this?
So I think that we can already see and establish certain things which are a result of COVID. It's, a lot of artists, because of isolation, created certain pieces which somehow responded to it. And I wouldn't say, of course, formally it's different, because people who always did abstract things would sort of continue in that, and people who did more figurative or representational things would continue that too. But there is a certain size of the work because not everybody could get to their studio. So there are a lot of smaller works, a lot of works on paper, and a lot of studies. I think a lot of artists sort of took it as a development of ideas which otherwise they wouldn't have spent the time on. And then
wow, that's fascinating. Development of ideas. It's a time of growth, really.
It could be turned into time of growth if you were not too scared of the fact that you can die.
Apart from that, I mean,
because unfortunately, the infection rate was in New York State and New York City horrible for a while.
It really was horrible.
But somehow, I must say, I was very fortunate that none of the friends died. Certain people were ill, but they didn't die, which is like, victory. But so, and then it's, of course, sort of direct comment on the virus. So you see the sort of shape of the virus in some of the paintings.
Right.
Or
how have you seen that come out?
Yeah, it's like very different way, different approach. Again, by some more abstract, some more sort of representational, but it appears in a lot of things, 3-dimensional and 2-dimensional. And also lately, obviously, with the Black Lives Matter, there is a lot of art which responds to that. Right. And it's going to be probably like growing trend answering the issues, this very, very difficult and really in need of solution, the societal issue of the racism and inclusion. So, and I think that in Chelsea, for example, there is a house because there was, the storefronts were covered by plywood, and that actually became kind of a support for paintings. And there is a lot of paintings. It's like beautiful, some really beautiful pieces. So it's like a direct answer to the social situation, and it's almost like a street gallery. And people can see it and enjoy it because there is a social distance. You can social distance and see things, and some of them are really very accomplished. So, and what's going to be next? Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? A lot of smaller galleries might not survive. The richer galleries will, like, James Cohen Gallery, Pace Gallery, PPOW, those will probably make it. I'm sure they will. The Metro Pictures, there are a lot of galleries, and those galleries also have very, very interesting programs online. But some of the smaller galleries on Lower East Side, I'm afraid they might not open. Although some of them did, and people help each other, like the galleries help each other. Wow. Like last Thursday, there was a night of the galleries on Lower East Side. Quite a few of them opened. And, they all know that if that area is going to get too, economically repressed, it's going to hurt everyone. So there are a lot of sort of auctions from artists from different galleries. People are not so territorial. People are much more sort of open to cooperation, and hopefully some of the good galleries will survive, even the smaller ones.
And do you think this will be the same, these patterns, do you think in Czech Republic it's the same or different in response to the pandemic?
I was thinking about it actually. There are quite a few wonderful galleries in Žižkov in Prague. And
that's true. There are where the TV tower is.
Yes, the TV tower is.
Yeah, I've been around
that
there.
area.
It's a beautiful area.
Yeah, beautiful area and good galleries. And they have days, the evenings when all of them are open. So in fact, they already do it for quite a while. So I see that maybe they kind of figured that one even before people figured that here.
Wow.
So, Czech art scene, I think, is very advanced on many, many levels.
How so?
Obviously, unfortunately, I was not there now for like 10 months, which is a long time, but maybe a little less. But so I don't know about all the youngest artists who show like in Gallery Jelení or Cursor Gallery, which visit Center for Contemporary Art, but the response to ecology or the degradation of environment came in the art of the Czech artist, even before that it became a big issue here.
And the art of ecology, did you say? How would you
Ecological,
define?
I mean, response to it, because you can do the landscape or you can work with the landscape. It's not only describing the landscape, but somehow do the event in the landscape, which brings people's attention to the degradation of the environment, you know.
Wow.
You can like set up the performance, you can do event, and that really brings a lot of attention to it.
I had, do you have a favorite? I was going to definitely ask you. I mean,
that's, you know, favorite is very difficult for me because I feel like it's sometimes not fair because sometimes I just forget things. But I mentioned these galleries, the Žižkov galleries, the Center for Contemporary Art, with this Galerie Jelení, Cursor Gallery, the Lucie Drdová Gallery, Kača Kastner Gallery, but then also close to National Gallery, the Philip, there's a gallery, it's important gallery up there. Maybe it will come back.
It'll come back. We can, if it comes back in conversation, we can definitely. That happens to me all the time.
We need to include it because it's important gallery. Like, but there are many more. There are sort of galleries which don't have a necessary space, defined space, but have these events like NI or INI gallery, and they do the events, and it's a great sort of thinking and process-oriented art, and I really like that. And the artists from the Chalupecký Award, like, you know, and the Futura Gallery, you know, Philip Polanski.
Philip Polanski, there. Now you've got
gallery,
it.
Yes. And so, you know, I'm sure I'm not naming everybody whom I go to see normally. Or the Proluka Gallery, you know, under the viaduct, which is like open space. So there is a lot happening in Prague.
Do you think, I mean, what do you think it takes? You say that Czechs are advanced as art. I agree, and the tradition and the history is so amazing. But what do you think it takes for a Czech artist to maybe come to the US? Like, do you think it's maybe harder for a Czech artist to come to the US or for an American to come to Prague? I mean,
I think for an American to come to Prague is easier than for the Czech artists to come to New York, because it's unfortunately the United States is so object-oriented. And I think the difference between Czech art in sort of, it's a generalization and might be wrong, but from what I see, I have a feeling that the Czech artists really take time to think about issues and subjects and are really very invested in sort of conceptual position of their work. The United States is very object-oriented. And so obviously thinking takes time and doesn't always result in tangible object. So coming to the United States without having a collector here is a very difficult thing, because the United States is so collector-based. No?
Collector-based.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and the same goes for young American artists. You can be a really very, very good artist, but if you don't find somebody who supports you, a collector who is willing to, not only you, but that supports the gallery which shows your work. And most of the galleries really are a little afraid to show the work unless they, not necessarily the artist already has a collector, but there is a potential.
There's a potential. So the Czech artists have to see that they have potential.
Unfortunately, this commercial side of American art scene is a problem. And it's a problem for American artists too, because unfortunately, it prevents certain people from doing wonderful things because they kind of censor themselves in thinking about issue of money.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes, I guess, fantastic networking skills. You have to really make yourself out there for Czech artists to really put yourself out there for a curator. And that is one of my favorite questions to ask people, is that if you were to come back to 1970, when you first began your career of curating art, I mean, what would you say to her? Would you have any advice to give her to
Oh,
younger
I would
self?
have advice for me. That's for sure. Like, be a little more. I really have a Catholic taste. Okay, I really like a lot of things. I really like art, and I can find something great in almost anything. I can go to kitschy thing,
Right.
kitschy side of art. I would think that I should have been more discernible, that maybe not to look at so many things and concentrate a little more and be more judgmental.
Be a little more judgmental and not be so open
Not to be
everything.
so open to everything and not to like so many things,
I know. I mean, in New York, it can be seen to be, we see so much. We like to like so many things. And that's a really good point. Well, for all of us that are online watching this, we would actually love if you could give us some recommendations of what we could be seeing online, or what have you been reading. I've actually seen I believe you have an Instagram that maybe you've seen some things, you've been posting things online. What would you recommend?
No, I mean, the galleries I mentioned have a really great programs and film programs too.
Film programs?
Yes, they have short films by artists, like James Cohen Gallery have a lot of artist films. The same Metro Pictures, I always said James Cohen Metro Pictures, PPOW, and then the museums. There was a beautiful film about Van Gogh at the Metropolitan Museum site.
Wow, Van Gogh.
And I mean, old master, but film was done so well, and Museum of Modern Art. So, I would go to the website of the larger organizations and go through their website, and you find a lot of great things.
I don't know about you, I'm really excited to go forward and do that. Well, thank you so much, Charlotta, for being here today with us. We've really enjoyed your time, and we can't wait to get out of this situation and to see, like you say, the growth that is coming from all these artists. It's exciting. So thank you so much, and back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I just want to still add one thing.
Please.
The Dia Beacon is open, so people could go there. And also Massachusetts Museum, Mass MoCA is open. I have been there, and there is a great installation by Blaine St. Croix, which is again, about the environment and the melting of all the cold spots on Earth. And for the artists or people more sort of art history oriented, the Clark Institute in Williamstown, Massachusetts is open. It's a fantastic collection. So people can get to certain, people can go to museums.
People can go to museums.
Yeah. And I did, because I couldn't live without museums.
People, go to museums.
Yeah, go to museums.
Go to museums. That's what we want to tell you. Go to museums.
Go to museums.